Thank you for joining me for 4-7. So in 4-7, this is another kind of expo throwback concept. Here we are talking about the quadratic formula. Okay, so again, at least you have reaped the benefit of you've seen this before back in the 9th grade. Okay, we covered this back in Expo. We're going to cover it a little bit differently, however, though. Okay, because the way that we're going to cover it here is we're going to leave it in radical form instead of getting decimals. All right. So, and again, I'll show you what I mean when we're kind of mid-problem. But the process we go through is honestly exactly the same. Okay. You identify A, B, and C to plug them in to the quadratic formula itself, which I've given to you right here. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And in class, you should even remind me, there is a really obnoxious but wonderful tune that this goes to help you remember the quadratic formula. Okay, so let's take a look at doing this. So remember, back in Expo, first thing we would do is label a as 1, b is 3, c is -5. And then, quite honestly, we just plug it into the formula. So negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay? So, next step is I want you to simplify under the square root, or I call that the discriminant. So I want this value right here, okay? And again, if you type this carefully into your calculator, the calculator can do the computation for you, okay? So let's type in -3 squared minus 4 times a times c. So all I want right now is that number right there. Okay, so just type in the calculator, get me that number. And then divided by 2 times 1 is just 2. All right, so that number that I just got, okay, that 29, okay, and I'll put it in green also, that is the value of the discriminant, okay? And what I want you to notice is 29 is a positive number, okay? And that positive number, what is it doing? Well, remember, these solutions are the same as x-intercepts, so it's giving me two solutions when that discriminant is positive. And when I say leave in radical form, that means you can actually leave your answer just like that, okay? That is your answer to this quadratic. And I'm totally okay if you leave it that way. So in some respects, it's easier because now you don't have to punch it back in your calculator and do all the work we had to do in Expo. You can actually leave your answer just like this, okay? That is representing your two solutions for this quadratic. All right, let's do another example. So here my A is 4, B is -4, C is 1. Okay, so let's plug it in the formula. So negative B, well, if B is already -4, that means negative B is going to be +4 plus or minus square root of negative B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. And again, the first thing I want you to simplify, that bit right in there, okay? So I want you to type that into your calculator and get an answer for me. So negative 4 squared minus 4 times A times C. All right, and here you're getting 0 there. Well, that's unique. So let's see what's going to play out because of that 0. Plus or minus the square root. We just got a 0 there, and that 0 is the discriminant all over 2 times 4, which is 8. All right, now this one, I'm actually going to take a little bit further because square root of 0, hopefully you know, is just 0, right? So whether I'm adding 0 or subtracting 0, isn't that the same thing? Wouldn't this just go away? And I would just have 4 over 8, or that would just give me 1/2. So this is a unique solution where notice what's happening when my discriminant is 0. Notice I'm getting one solution when that discriminant is 0, because when the discriminant is 0, it's scratching off the square root altogether. I don't have the plus or minus anymore because of that 0, and all it leaves me with is one solution. All right, well, let's keep the ball rolling. So this one has 2 notes that I want you to keep in mind as you're looking at it, okay? So the 2 things are, 1, simplify the radicals if possible, and for that you can reference 4.6a if you need a little recalling on how to simplify radicals. And just like with factoring, make sure the quadratic is set equal to 0. That is in reference to 4, 5. Remember in factoring, that's what we had to do? Well, same thing here, right? That's something that these 2 methods have in common that make them different than completing the square. So when I say I need it set equal to 0, what that means is my first step here is subtracting that 3 over, so it equals 0. And now that I've done that, now I set up my formula, okay? So here, my A is 2, B is 6, C is negative 3, and I go when I just start using that formula. Negative B plus or minus square root of 6 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. Again, first things first, let's get this value right there. Okay, so I have 6 squared minus 4 times A times C, and I get 60. All right, so let's go back here. So that gives me 60 in there. Okay, so what I'm seeing is my discriminant this time, that number inside the square root, is 60. So this time, remember my little side notes of when you can simplify, you should? Well, I want you to notice that square root of 60. Let's do a little scratch work over here. So square root of 60. If I'm thinking about those perfect squares, again, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. If I'm thinking of those and thinking to myself, how can this break down? The answer is this can break down into 4 times 15. So remember, when you can, you should be breaking this down because the square root of 4 is 2. So really what this equals is negative 6 plus or minus 2 square roots of 15 all over 4. And what I want you to notice, each of these numbers, each of those numbers can be divided by 2. Notice I'm not considering what's inside the radical. I'm only considering the negative 6, the 2, and the 4. Each of those are divisible by 2. So I can simplify this fraction by dividing everything by 2. Okay, aside from the square root, because that's taken care of by this 2 right here. So you don't divide the square root. But I divide everything else by 2 to reduce this fraction. And of course, you don't really have to show the 1 there. That was just for visual learners that needed to know where did the 2 go. So you can picture a 1 there if you want to. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's how you would simplify these things this time. Okay? And what I want you to notice here, we have another positive discriminant. And what are we getting? Well, we're getting that plus or minus in action this time. That plus or minus being in action is giving us 2 solutions. Okay? So when it goes away because it's 0, you only get a single solution. When it's positive, that plus or minus is in full action and you get 2 solutions. So let's take a look. Let's further investigate this idea of the discriminant, because the discriminant is actually a very powerful tool. It lets you figure out how many solutions your quadratic is going to have. And again, that is a very powerful tool to have in your repertoire. So when your discriminant is greater than 0, so when it's positive, you're getting 2 solutions each time. When it's equal to 0, you're getting 1 solution. It's sitting right on that x-axis. One that you haven't seen yet is what if it's negative? Negative means no real solutions, okay? It means it does not cross the x-axis. What that actually leads to, that we're going to investigate next section, it leads to imaginary solutions. And again, that's a very new concept, something that we're going to develop more in 4.8. But that's what's happening here when that discriminant is negative, okay? So let's take a moment, because on your test, you are going to have a question that specifically is only about the determinant, or the discriminant, sorry. And the discriminant is literally just that piece that's under the square root, okay? That piece that I was always putting in green, circling in green, saying, hey, you start by simplifying here. Well, that is your discriminant, okay? So here you get b squared minus 4 times a times c. And again, once you label that out, you are more than welcome to put that in your calculator. So negative 3 squared minus 4 times a times c. Here, your discriminant, whoa, don't know what happened there, sorry. Negative 3 squared minus 4 times a times c. You get a discriminant of negative 19, okay? So negative 19, being a negative number, that is one of the situations you are getting no solutions, okay? And the reason for that is because when you put that in the radical, Imagine trying to take the square root of a negative number, okay? At this point, you can't, okay? You don't know what that means to take the square root of a negative. So that's why this happens. And when I ask you type of solution, right now this really doesn't mean much to you, but next section, because there's no real solutions, it's actually generating something called imaginary solutions. And again, that's kind of a preview for what I'm going to have you do in the future in section 8. Right now, just recognize that they're not real. You have no real solutions, so you're dealing with imaginary ones. This next one, so b squared minus 4 times a times c. The discriminant is a piece inside the square root. So let's type that into our calculator. So b squared minus 4 times a times c, you get 41. And 41 as a positive number means that your plus or minus the square root is in complete action. So you are getting both of your solutions, and those solutions are real numbers. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed your throwback to exponential algebra. To kind of revisit this idea of the quadratic formula. So just make sure you kind of you write your summary. Again, maybe even making connections between what did you remember and what's new to you from what you learned in Expo. That would be a great conversation to have in your summary. Just make sure you write that for me, please, and then make sure that you come back ready to do your practice work.